The spare bedroom door swung open on a Tuesday morning, and Evelyn Marsh stood very still in the doorway. Theo's drawings were taped to the desk, bridges, careful and precise, drawn with the small roll of tape she had left in the drawer. Her mother's quilt was pulled up to the boy's chin, the faded pattern of blue and cream rising and falling with his breath. Marcus's jacket was folded over the chair with the kind of precision that comes from a man who has learned to leave every borrowed space better than he found it. They had tried to leave before she woke up. She could see that. The sleeping bag was already rolled. Theo's backpack sat by the door, packed and ready, the zipper pulled tight. She was not angry. She was something else entirely, something that had no clean name, something that sat in the chest like a stone and like a warmth at the same time. Theo looked up from his book. His eyes were serious and dark, the way they always were, the way that had first made her stop and look twice 6 weeks ago across a quiet library floor. Quote 0, he said. Very polite, very careful. Quote 1, she said. Marcus was on his feet already, his hand raised slightly, his mouth open. Quote 2. She held up one hand. The room went quiet. Outside, a mockingbird was going through its whole catalog in the oak tree, indifferent and bright. Quote 3, she asked. Marcus stopped. His jaw worked once. Quote 4, he said. Quote 5. She nodded. She turned around. She walked down the hallway to the kitchen, and she started making breakfast for 3. She did not look back. She did not need to. To understand why Evelyn Marsh, a 58-year-old retired librarian from Clover Falls, Georgia, a woman who had kept that spare bedroom door closed for 7 years, stood in that hallway and felt something unlock in her chest rather than shatter, you have to go back to the beginning. To a Monday morning in October, 6 weeks before. To a corner table. To a 9-year-old boy reading a structural engineering textbook meant for adults, reading it like it contained the answers to questions he hadn't yet figured out how to ask out loud. You have to understand what she saw in him before she knew a single fact about his life. And you have to understand what it costs a man like Marcus Webb to let someone hold a door open for him, and what it finally took to make him walk through it. Before we go back to that beginning, if this story is already sitting somewhere in your chest, hit that subscribe button and drop your city in the comments below. There are people watching this from places Evelyn has never been, and somehow this story belongs to all of them. Now let's go back to where it all started. 6 weeks before that Tuesday morning, Evelyn Marsh arrived at the Clover Falls Public Library at 7:48 a.m., the same as every day, 12 minutes before opening. The fun is just beginning. Tell us what city you're from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The tension is rising. Who's watching from where? Like and subscribe to the channel. More to come. Tell us in the comments who's from which country, and give us a like and subscribe. The plot thickens. Let's check our geography. Tell us where you are now. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. We're just warming up. Tell us where you're watching from. Give the video a like and hit the subscribe button. The climax is near. Share where you're from, like, and be sure to subscribe. Events are unfolding rapidly. Write your city in the chat, give it a like, and subscribe so you don't get lost. The juiciest part is yet to come. Let's get started. Get to know each other. Where are you from? Like and subscribe right now. The suspense is building. Tell us where you're watching this episode from and reward us with a like and a subscribe. The excitement is running high. Tell us what city you're from now. Give us a big like and subscribe to the channel. Her late husband Robert had always said punctuality was a form of love, and she had never found a reason to argue with him. The key turned in the lock with a familiar click. The door swung open and the smell came out to meet her. Old paper, lemon wood polish, and the faint sweetness of the lavender sachets she kept in her cardigan pocket. Tuesday's cardigan was sage green, always. That was simply the rule. She set her bag on the circulation desk and moved through the stacks the way water moves through a familiar riverbed, straightening a spine here, sliding a returned book back into its place there. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, warming up slowly, the way they always did. Earl Watkins was already waiting on the front steps when she unlocked the door at 8 o'clock sharp. 73 years old, Navy veteran, had read every newspaper in the periodicals section going back to 2019. Quote 6, quote 7, quote 8. He shuffled past her toward his usual chair by the window, already reaching for the folded newspaper under his arm. She watched him go and felt the particular quiet comfort of a life with predictable edges. By 9, the young mothers had arrived with their strollers, parking them in the children's section with the soft thud of rubber wheels on linoleum. By 10, 2 teenagers sat at the study tables pretending they were not doing homework. Evelyn did not call them out. She simply slid a dictionary within reach of the girl who kept squinting at her notebook and said nothing. She had been a librarian for 31 years. She knew how to help people without making them feel helped. It was on that first Monday in October that she noticed the boy. He was sitting at the corner table, the one tucked between the reference shelf and the window that looked out onto Magnolia Street. Small for 9, serious-faced, wearing a gray hoodie that was clean but slightly too large in the shoulders. He had a book open in front of him, not a children's book, not a middle-grade novel. It was a structural engineering textbook, adult section, 3rd shelf. He was reading it the way some children read comic books, fast, hungry, like the pages owed him something. Evelyn stopped. Her hand rested on the edge of a shelf. She had spent 31 years watching children in libraries. She knew the ones who came for story time, the ones who came for the air conditioning, the ones who came because their parents made them. She knew the ones who were simply killing time. This boy was not killing time. He was using it, carefully, like someone who understood it was a limited resource. She did not approach him. Not that day. Instead, she went to the reference section, found a copy of The Way Things Work, and set it quietly on the edge of his table without a word. He looked up at her. She was already walking away. He came back the next day, and the day after that. By the 9th day, the corner table was simply his. The way certain chairs in certain rooms belonged to certain people without anyone saying so. Evelyn watched him the way she watched everything in her library, quietly, from a careful distance, with the patience of someone who understood that some things reveal themselves only if you don't push. On the 9th morning, she made 2 cups of hot chocolate in the small break room behind the circulation desk. She poured them into real ceramic mugs, not paper cups. One of the mugs had a chipped handle and the words, "World's Okayest Librarian," printed in faded blue letters. Her husband Robert had given it to her for their 22nd anniversary, laughing the whole time he handed it over. She had used it every day since. She set the chipped mug in front of Theo without a word. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he wrapped both hands around it, carefully, like it was something that might be taken back. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." She sat down across from him with her own mug. She did not open a book. She just let the silence breathe. After a while, Theo said, "I like it here." "Good," she said. "That's what it's for." He looked out the window at Magnolia Street, where 2 pigeons were arguing over something near the curb. "It's the same temperature every day," he said. "In here." Evelyn looked at him over the rim of her mug. She understood exactly what he meant. She did not say so. "It is," she agreed. At 6 o'clock precisely, the front door opened and the cold October air came in with it. The man who stepped inside was tall, lean, wearing a blue polo shirt with a hardware store logo on the chest. His work boots were clean, but worn at the heel. His eyes went straight to Theo before they went anywhere else in the room. Theo sat up slightly. Quote, 18. Quote, the man, Marcus, she would learn, stopped just inside the doorway. He did not come further in. He stood with his hands at his sides, and something about the way he held himself reminded Evelyn of a person waiting in a line they weren't sure they were allowed to be in. Sorry if he was any trouble, Marcus said. He wasn't any trouble at all. She meant it. Marcus nodded once. Theo, get your things. Theo closed his book with the careful precision of someone who had been taught to respect borrowed things. He slid it to the edge of the table, returning it without being asked. He lifted his backpack from the floor and settled it onto his shoulders, and Evelyn noticed the weight of it, the way it pulled, far too heavy for a single school day. She noticed something else, the left shoe. The sole was separating at the toe, held together with something darker and harder than glue. Construction adhesive, she thought, applied neatly, applied by someone who knew what they were doing. Marcus held the door. Theo walked through it. Neither of them looked back. Evelyn stood at the circulation desk for a long moment after the door swung shut, her hand resting on the chipped mug handle, not moving. The second week settled into a rhythm, and Evelyn led it. Theo arrived each afternoon at 3:22, give or take 2 minutes. He hung his backpack on the same chair hook. He opened his book to wherever he had left off, as if the library were simply a room in a house he lived in, one where the rules were clear and the temperature never changed. On Monday of that second week, she noticed his hair was damp, not rain damp, washed. It smelled faintly of the kind of soap that comes in bulk dispensers, the thin, sharp kind the YMCA, 2 blocks over, used in their locker rooms. She filed that away without examining it too closely. His lunch was the same every day: a sleeve of peanut butter crackers from a gas station rack, an apple, a juice box with a bent straw. He ate it at 3:45, methodically, without looking up from his reading. On Wednesday, she tried something. Theo, she said, setting a new book beside his crackers, have you read anything by David Macaulay? He looked at the cover. Is he the one who did the Castle book? He is. I looked at that one at school. He turned a page. The cross-sections are really accurate. Evelyn kept her expression neutral. High praise. The corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. She went back to the circulation desk, feeling something she hadn't felt in a while, the specific satisfaction of a correct match. Book to reader, reader to book. That evening, at 6 o'clock, Marcus appeared at the door in a different shirt, gray this time, with a warehouse logo above the pocket. He looked like he had come from somewhere loud and come quickly. There was a grease smudge along his left forearm that he hadn't had time to wash off. Quote, 29, quote, he said to Theo. Quote, 30, quote, Theo said. That was the whole conversation. Theo had his backpack on before Marcus finished nodding. Evelyn watched them go. Then she stood at the window and watched Marcus's car pull away from the curb, a silver Honda Civic, 2009 or so, with a crack running across the rear windshield like a river on a map. She went home. She made dinner for one. She ate it at the kitchen table across from the empty chair she still hadn't moved. She was washing her dish when she remembered she had left a book in her car. She dried her hands and went out to get it, and that was when she saw the Honda. It was parked across the street from the library. The library had been closed for 3 hours. The interior light was on, low and warm, the way a light looks when someone is trying to use as little of it as possible. She could see two silhouettes through the glass, one larger, one small, close together. She stood on her porch in the November dark, her dish towel still in her hand. A car door did not open. No one got out. The light stayed on. She went back inside. She sat down at the kitchen table. She looked at the closed door at the end of the hallway, the spare bedroom, shut for 7 years. She sat there for a long time. It was a Tuesday in November when the cold came early. Not the slow Georgia cool that eases in over weeks. This was sharp and sudden, the kind that catches a southern town without its coat. By 5 o'clock, the library windows had fogged at the corners, and the radiator in the reference section was making its old, unreliable knocking sound. Evelyn read aloud to Theo from a book about bridges. She had pulled it from the engineering shelf that morning, thinking of him before he arrived, which was something she had started doing without noticing. "They're designed to flex," she read, her finger tracing the diagram. "Engineers build movement into the structure on purpose. A bridge that can't bend will eventually break." Theo looked at the cross-section diagram for a long moment. "So, being rigid is the problem." "That's what they found out. Yes." He nodded slowly, like he was filing it somewhere important. 6 o'clock came. The library's old wall clock ticked past it without ceremony. Evelyn turned a page. Theo did not move toward his backpack. He understood, without either of them saying so, that they were simply going to wait. 6:15, 6:30. The radiator knocked. Outside, the wind pushed a paper cup across the empty parking lot. "Is your dad usually on time?" Evelyn asked, keeping her voice even. "Always," Theo said. He turned a page without looking up, but he hadn't been reading for the last 10 minutes. She could tell by the way his eyes weren't moving. At 6:47, the door opened hard. Marcus came through it fast, bringing cold air and the smell of asphalt and something metallic. His hands, she saw his hands first. The right one had a cut across the palm, not deep, but open, the kind that comes from a tool slipping in the cold. He had wrapped it loosely with what looked like a piece of shop rag. He was looking at Theo before he was fully through the door. "I'm sorry, bud." His voice came out rough, like he'd been holding it in for the whole drive. ___, quote, _38, ___. Theo looked up. Something moved across his face. Relief, quickly covered. Quote 39, he said. Quote 40. The room went very still. Marcus looked at her then. Really looked, for the first time in 3 weeks of doorway exchanges. His jaw was tight. His eyes held something complicated. Gratitude and something heavier underneath it. The specific weight of a person who has needed help and spent a long time pretending otherwise. Evelyn said simply. She had already retrieved the first aid kit from behind the circulation desk. Quote, 42, quote, 43. He sat. She cleaned the cut at the circulation desk, while Theo turned pages in the lamplight, pretending not to watch. Neither adult spoke for a long moment. The antiseptic had a sharp, clean smell. His hand was steady under hers, but only just. Then Evelyn said, ___, quote, _44, ___. Marcus said nothing, but he did not pull his hand away. The following week, Evelyn stopped pretending she wasn't paying attention. She had always been good at the quiet work of noticing. It was the same skill that made her a good librarian, the ability to watch without making people feel watched. But now she was cataloging, deliberately, the way you do when the pieces are starting to arrange themselves into a shape you recognize but aren't ready to name. Monday, Theo's hair damp again, YMCA soap. She knew that smell now. Tuesday, same lunch, crackers, apple, juice box, eaten at exactly 3:45. Wednesday, He finished his homework in 41 minutes with the focused urgency of someone who understood he would not have a quiet place to do it later. When he was done, he didn't relax. He simply moved to the next thing. She brought him a cup of tea that afternoon. He accepted it without the slight hesitation he'd had in the beginning. That small change cost her something she couldn't name. Quote, 45, quote, she said, sitting across from him. Quote, 46, quote. He thought about it seriously. He thought about it almost smiling. On Thursday, she asked him something she had been carrying all week. She kept her voice light, casual, the way you ask questions you actually need the answers to. Quote 52, quote 53. Theo said, not looking up. Quote 54. He said it the way children say things that are simply facts of their world. No weight in it. No awareness of the weight. Evelyn nodded. She did not write anything down. She didn't need to. 2 jobs. Opposite ends of town. 6 days a week, she calculated. And still. The Honda parked across the street at 9 o'clock at night. That evening she drove home a different way. She told herself it was because of the roadwork on Birch Street. She turned down Magnolia. She slowed without meaning to. The Honda was there. Same spot. Same interior light, low and amber, burning careful and small against the dark. She pulled over. She sat with the engine running and the heat on and looked at that light for a long moment. Inside the car, she could just make out the shape of Theo's head, tilted slightly, the way it tilted when he was reading. She thought about the spare bedroom, the closed door. 7 years of Robert's things arranged exactly as he had left them. His architectural magazines stacked by the window, his reading glasses in their case, his last crossword puzzle folded open on the desk, 3 clues still blank. She put the car in drive. She went home. She stood in the hallway outside the spare bedroom door for a long time before she finally reached out and turned the handle. The spare bedroom smelled like cedar and stillness. 7 years of it. Evelyn stood in the doorway with her hand on the light switch and looked at what the room had become. A careful museum of a person who no longer needed his things. Robert's architectural magazines in their neat stacks. His reading glasses folded in their case. His drafting pencils lined up in the ceramic cup Theo's age had made in some school art class that Robert had never thrown away because he never threw anything away. She crossed to the desk. The crossword puzzle was exactly where he had left it, folded open, 3 clues blank. She picked it up. She stood there holding it for a long moment, her thumb moving over the paper's edge. Then she folded it carefully and carried it to her own bedside drawer. She did not throw it away. She just moved it somewhere it could still be his without being a monument. She went back to the spare room and started clearing. It took 2 hours. She changed the lamp bulb to something warmer. She put her mother's quilt, blue and cream, worn soft from decades of use, at the foot of the bed. She left the desk clear except for a small roll of tape she found in a kitchen drawer and placed there without quite knowing why. Then she sat down at the desk and wrote a note on a piece of plain white paper. She wrote it in her clearest handwriting, the way she used to write the cards she tucked into books she recommended. The key is under the blue pot on the porch. No conditions, no questions, just come in from the cold. She folded it once. She went to the porch and lifted the blue ceramic pot, the one Robert had painted himself, badly, the summer before he died, insisting he was, quote, _55. She put the key underneath it. She left the note on the library's circulation desk the next morning, tucked inside the copy of The Way Things Work. She knew Theo would return that day. She watched him find it. He opened the book to check if he'd left anything inside. He always checked, careful boy. And the note fell out. He read it. His face did not change. He folded it exactly as she had folded it and put it in his jacket pocket. He did not say anything. Neither did she. That evening, Marcus arrived at 6 o'clock in the hardware store shirt, and Evelyn watched his face the way she'd been watching it for weeks. That careful, sealed expression of a man managing more than he was showing. Theo handed him the folded note without a word, the way you hand someone something that belongs to them. Marcus read it. His jaw tightened. A muscle moved near his eye. He folded the note. He put it in his shirt pocket. He looked at Evelyn across the circulation desk and said, quote, 56, quote, 57, quote, she said. He nodded once. He held the door for Theo. They walked out into the cold, and she heard the Honda's engine turn over twice before it caught. The key stayed under the blue pot that night, and the night after that. The key stayed under the blue pot for 4 nights. Evelyn knew because she checked. Not obviously. She was not the kind of woman who hovered. But each morning when she stepped onto the porch to bring in the paper, her eyes went to the pot, the way your tongue finds a loose tooth. Still there, still there, still there. On the 3rd night, the temperature dropped to 27 degrees. She stood at her kitchen window with her decaf going cold in her hands and watched the frost form on Robert's vegetable garden, the one she still tended because she didn't know how to stop, and thought about the Honda's heater. She had heard it running that first night in the cold parking lot. She knew what a struggling car heater sounded like. She went to bed. She lay in the dark and listened to the house settle around her. At the library the next day, Theo was quieter than usual. Not sad. He was rarely sad in any visible way, but contained, the way a jar is contained, like something inside was pressing gently against the glass. She set his hot chocolate on the table. He wrapped his hands around it immediately. Quote, 58, quote, she asked, quote, 59, quote, he said. She sat down. She waited. After a moment, he said. He looked at the steam rising from his mug. Her chest tightened. She kept her face even. Theo turned this over. Quote, 6 and 6. Quote, 67, she said. Quote, 68. He nodded and went back to his book, but his shoulders had dropped slightly, like something had been gently set down. That evening, after Marcus collected him, same doorway, same careful thanks, same sealed expression, Evelyn sat at the circulation desk for a long time after the lights were off. The library was dark, except for the green glow of the exit sign above the door. She thought about what Theo had said. She thought about Marcus's face when he read the note, that tightened jaw, that movement near his eye, the way pride and exhaustion look almost identical on a person who's been carrying both for too long. She thought about Diane. She didn't know her name yet, but she knew there had been someone. She lay still and listened to her front door open, slowly, and then close. 2 sets of footsteps in the hallway, one adult, careful and deliberate, and one small, half asleep, shuffling. A whispered exchange she couldn't make out, then the spare bedroom door easing shut. She stared at the ceiling for a long time. At 6 o'clock, she rose, dressed, and put the kettle on. She heard Theo's voice first, low, murmuring, the sound of a child reading to himself in the particular cadence he used when he thought no one was listening. She walked down the hallway. She stopped outside the spare bedroom. She put her hand on the door and pushed it open. Theo was at the desk, her mother's quilt still around his shoulders, a library book open in front of him. His drawings were taped to the desk's surface, bridges, careful and exact, and the library's front window, and a figure in a sage green cardigan. He had used the small roll of tape she'd left in the drawer. Marcus's jacket was folded over the chair back, folded with the precision of someone who had been taught that you leave borrowed spaces better than you found them. Marcus was awake. He was on his feet before she finished opening the door, his face doing something complicated and painful. Apology assembling itself, explanation right behind it. He opened his mouth. She held up one hand. The room went quiet. Outside, the mockingbird had started up in the oak tree, indifferent and bright, running through its whole catalog like it had somewhere to be. Evelyn looked at Theo. He was watching her with those serious dark eyes, perfectly still, the quilt around his shoulders, waiting to see what kind of world this was going to turn out to be. She looked at Marcus. His jaw was tight. His eyes were red at the edges, not from sleep, or not only from sleep. His shirt was the gray warehouse one. He had come here straight from a shift, she realized, straight from work, in the coldest hour of the night, because his son had woken up shivering and he had finally run out of ways to be strong enough alone. "How do you take your coffee?" she asked. Marcus stopped. The apology dissolved. Something else moved across his face, something that had no clean name, that lived in the space between relief and grief and gratitude. "Black," he said. His voice came out rough. "2 sugars." She nodded. She turned around and walked to the kitchen, and she took 3 mugs down from the cabinet, including the chipped one that said "World's Okayest Librarian," and she started making breakfast. For 3. The weeks that followed were quiet in the way that healing is quiet, not the absence of sound, but the absence of strain. Marcus told her everything in pieces, not all at once. Over several evenings at the kitchen table, with decaf cooling in their mugs and Robert's crossword puzzle spread between them, she had started leaving it out, and he had started filling in a clue here and there, and neither of them commented on this. He told her about his firm, about Diane's illness, the medical bills arriving after, the apartment, the slow collapse of everything he'd built. He told it the way you tell things when you've been carrying them alone for so long that setting them down feels dangerous. Evelyn listened. She did not offer solutions. She offered the table, the coffee, the crossword, and her presence, which was, she had learned long ago, what people actually needed most. One evening, he said, Evelyn looked at her mug. She paused. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. In March, through a word Evelyn placed carefully with an old friend, Marcus was introduced to a local contractor named Jean Harwell, who needed someone who could read structural drawings and communicate with clients. The pay was $22 an hour to start. Marcus shook Jean's hand in the parking lot of the hardware store where he'd been working mornings, and his voice only caught slightly when he said yes. By April, he had signed a lease on a small apartment on Delaney Street, 3 blocks from the library, $847 a month, which was possible now, barely, and getting less barely each week. He told Evelyn over the crossword, quote, 77, quote, 78, quote, she said. A pause. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, Robert's oak tree moved in the April wind. Theo's going to want to keep coming here, Marcus said. To the library. And Sunday dinners, if that's all right. She looked at him over her glasses. The key stays under the blue pot. He nodded. His throat moved. He looked back down at the crossword. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in May, the Clover Falls Public Library was full of warm light and the smell of banana bread Evelyn had brought from home, mixed with lemon polish and old paper and everything that made the place itself. Theo was at his corner table, everyone knew it, working on a drawing with a focus that shut out the entire world. New sneakers on his feet, both soles intact. Marcus stood at the circulation desk, talking to Evelyn while she processed returns. He was wearing a collared shirt. He looked like a man becoming himself again. Theo held up the drawing. Miss Evie, look. She looked. It was a blueprint, rough but careful. A house with a garden, a porch, a small round pot by the front door. "What is it?" she asked. "It's where we live," he said simply. She looked at Marcus. He looked at her. Neither of them corrected him. Some things are true before they're finished. If this story reached something in you, like this video, subscribe, and drop your city in the comments. And ask yourself, what would you have done if you'd found that note